You woke up today with 86,400 seconds. By tonight, every single one will be gone. You cannot save them. You cannot deposit them into tomorrow. You cannot get a refund. They simply vanish, gone forever, like coins dropped into a bottomless well. Here is what nobody told you. You have been operating a bank account your entire life. Not a money account, a time account. And you have been spending it blind. No budget, no tracking, no awareness of where it all goes. What if you treated your hours the way you treat your paycheck? What if every minute had a visible price tag? What if you could see exactly where your time wealth was bleeding out? There is a reason millionaires guard their calendars more fiercely than their bank accounts. They know something most people never learn. They understand a truth that changes everything once you see it. You have been robbed your entire adult life, not of money, of something far more valuable, something you can never earn back. And the thief? You invited them in, you handed them the keys, you smiled while they took everything. By the end of this audiobook, you will calculate your time net worth. The number will either free you or haunt you into immediate action. Either way, you will never look at a clock the same way again. This is not time management. Forget everything you have heard about productivity hacks and morning routines and getting more done. This is time economics. This is learning to see the invisible currency flowing through your fingers every single day. And you are about to become financially literate in the only currency that actually matters. Let me tell you about a woman named Maria. She sat in her car in the parking garage at 7:43 in the evening, engine off, hands still gripping the wheel. She had promised her daughter she would be home for dinner. Again. She had promised herself she would start that online course. Again. She had told her best friend they would catch up soon. That was 4 months ago. Maria earned a good salary. She had worked hard for 2 decades to reach this point, but sitting in that parking garage, she realized something that made her stomach drop. She was rich in money and bankrupt in time. She had spent 20 years building financial security, while her life slipped through her fingers like sand. Does any of this feel familiar? Have you ever wondered where your days actually go? Maria is not a failure. Maria is normal. Maria is what happens when intelligent, hard-working people operate without a time budget. When we track every dollar but let thousands of hours disappear without a trace. Let me expand on Maria's story, because her transformation illustrates everything we have been discussing. After that evening in the parking garage, Maria went home and did something she had never done before. She sat down with a notebook and tried to account for where her time was going, not in general terms, specifically, hour by hour, day by day, week by week. What she found shocked her. The job that was supposed to be 50 hours a week was actually consuming 65 when she counted commuting, preparation, and the mental overhead that followed her home. The household maintenance she thought took a few hours weekly was actually 15 hours when she tracked everything. The social obligations she resented but maintained were costing her 12 hours a month. And then there was what she called ghost time, hours that simply vanished without her knowing where they went. An hour in the morning, checking email and news before getting out of bed. 2 hours in the evening with television playing in the background while she scrolled her phone. Random intervals of distraction scattered throughout every day. When Maria added it all up, she found that she had about 16 discretionary hours per week, 16 hours that were actually hers to allocate, and she had been spending nearly all of them on ghost activities, scrolling, watching, numbing. No wonder she felt time poor. She had 16 hours of true freedom each week and was wasting almost every single one. Maria's transformation began with a simple commitment. She would reclaim 8 of those 16 hours for what mattered. Just 8, half of her discretionary time. She blocked 2 hours on Tuesday evenings for the online course she had been postponing. She blocked 2 hours on Thursday evenings for time with her daughter, protected and uninterrupted. She blocked 1 hour on Saturday mornings for a phone call with her best friend. She blocked 3 hours on Sunday for whatever she wanted, completely unplanned and uncommitted. 8 hours, redirected from ghost time to intentional time. The first week was uncomfortable. During her blocked hours, Maria felt the pull of distraction. Her phone beckoned. The television called. Her mind kept wondering what was happening online, what emails were arriving, what news she was missing. But she held the line. She sat with the discomfort. And by week 3, something shifted. The discomfort faded. The blocked time became anticipated. The online course was actually interesting. The time with her daughter was revealing a person she had been too distracted to notice. The call with her friend was rekindling a connection that had almost died. Maria did not become a different person. She did not overhaul her entire life. She simply reclaimed 8 hours a week from ghost time and redirected them to what mattered. 1 year later, Maria had completed her certification. Her relationship with her daughter had transformed. Her friendship had deepened into something she depended on. And she had discovered that 16 hours of discretionary time, when half of them are spent intentionally, feels like abundance. What would 8 hours of reclaimed time mean for you? What matters that you have been too distracted to pursue? Think about how you handle money. You probably know your bank balance within a reasonable range. You notice when you overspend. You feel something when you waste $50 on something you do not need. You might even have a budget, or at least a general sense of where your money should go. Now think about your time. Do you know how many hours you have left? Not in the day. In your life. Have you ever calculated it? Do you know where your hours went last week? Not generally. Specifically. Could you account for them the way you could account for your spending? Most people cannot. Most people have no idea. And that is the great tragedy of modern life. We have become financially sophisticated while remaining temporally illiterate. Let me give you a framework for changing this. It is called the time statement, and it works like a financial statement for your hours. Just as a financial statement shows income, expenses, and net worth, a time statement shows deposits, expenditures, and time wealth. Your deposits are simple. 168 hours per week. The same for everyone. This is your gross time income. Your fixed expenditures are the hours committed to non-negotiable activities. Sleep typically takes 49 to 63 hours. Work plus commute might take 45 to 60 hours. Basic maintenance like eating, hygiene, and household tasks might take 10 to 20 hours. These are your overhead costs. They must be paid. Your discretionary time is what remains after fixed expenditures. For most working adults, this is somewhere between 20 and 50 hours per week. This is your net time income, the hours that are actually yours to allocate. Your time investments are discretionary hours that build future capacity. Learning, relationship building, health, system creation. These are assets on your time balance sheet. Your time expenses are discretionary hours that are consumed without return. Entertainment, distraction, obligations that drain without benefit. These are the costs that deplete your account. Your time waste is hours that vanished without intention or benefit. The ghost time, the scroll holes, the activities you did not choose. These are pure losses. When you calculate time investments minus time waste, you get your time net worth trajectory. If investments exceed waste, you're getting time wealthier over time. Your capacity is growing. Your future is expanding. If waste exceeds investments, you are getting time poorer. Your capacity is stagnating or shrinking. Your future is narrowing. Most people, when they first calculate their time statement, discover they have negative time net worth trajectory. They are wasting more than they are investing. They are getting poorer in time, even as they might be getting richer in money. The goal is to flip that trajectory, not by working harder or sleeping less, by redirecting hours from waste to investment, by protecting discretionary time from ghost activities, by treating your time statement with the same seriousness you treat your financial statement. What would your time statement look like if you calculated it honestly today? Let us begin with the account you never knew you had. Every morning at midnight, something remarkable happens. A deposit is made into your account. Exactly 86,400 seconds appear in your balance. This is your daily allotment, your time deposit, the universe's gift to every living human being. But here is what makes this account different from any bank account you have ever held. First, there is no rollover. Whatever you do not spend today disappears at midnight. You cannot save it. You cannot transfer it to tomorrow. It simply evaporates, whether you used it wisely or let it slip away. Second, there is no overdraft protection. You cannot borrow from tomorrow. You cannot take out a time loan to get more hours when you run out. When today's deposit is gone, it is gone. Third, there is no earning more. You cannot work harder to get more time deposited tomorrow. The deposit is fixed, 86,400 seconds. Same for the billionaire, same for the beggar, same for everyone. This is the great equalizer, the one resource distributed with perfect fairness. And yet some people seem to extract enormous value from their 86,400 seconds, while others feel perpetually starved for time. The difference is not in the deposit. The difference is in the spending. Why do we fail to see time this way? Why does a $5 purchase feel more significant than a 5-hour commitment? The answer lies deep in our evolutionary wiring. Our ancestors did not need to think about time as a scarce resource. They lived in cycles. Seasons came and went. Days repeated endlessly. The sun rose and fell with reliable rhythm. Time felt infinite because the pattern seemed eternal. They needed to worry about food, shelter, and safety. Those were the scarce resources that determined survival. A brain that obsessed over time management would have been a brain distracted from gathering berries and watching for predators. We inherited that brain. We walk around in the modern world with mental software designed for a different era. Money, being concrete and countable, triggers our scarcity instincts. We see the number in our account. We feel the weight of bills in our wallet. We understand viscerally when it is running low. Time is abstract. We cannot see it. We cannot hold it. We cannot count it stacking up or depleting. And so we spend it with a carelessness that would horrify us if applied to money. We say yes to commitments without calculating the cost. We surrender hours to entertainment designed to be addictive. We squander our most productive periods on tasks that do not matter, all because we never learn to see the invisible currency flowing out of our account. Consider this. If someone asked you to donate $50 to a cause you did not care about, you would probably hesitate. You would consider whether it fit your budget. You might decline politely. But if someone asks for 3 hours of your time for something you do not care about, how often do you say yes? How often do you give away hours you would never give away in dollar form? This is the first shift this audiobook will create in you. The ability to see time as you see money, to feel that same instinctive protectiveness, to recognize when you are being asked to spend without return. Now let me introduce you to Marcus. Marcus works in corporate finance. He spends his days analyzing investments, calculating returns, managing portfolios worth millions. He is very good at his job. His clients trust him with their financial futures. One evening, Marcus sat in his home office doing what he called unwinding. 3 hours of scrolling through social media, watching videos that auto-played into more videos, reading articles he would not remember by morning. His wife asked if he wanted to take a walk. "Maybe later," he said. He never took the walk. Here is the irony that should make you uncomfortable. Marcus would never invest his clients' money the way he invested his own time. He would never put millions into assets with no return. He would never let accounts drain without tracking where the money went. He would never tell a client that their portfolio disappeared, but he was not sure how. Yet that is exactly what Marcus does with his hours. Every single day. The man who would never waste a client's dollar wastes his own hours without a second thought. How different would your life be if you treated your time the way a financial professional treats money? Let us do some math together. The average life expectancy, depending on where you live, falls somewhere around 78 to 82 years. Let us be generous and say you have 80 years. That sounds like a lot until you convert it to hours. 80 years multiplied by 365 days, multiplied by 24 hours, gives you approximately 700,800 hours. That is your total lifetime deposit, the complete sum you will ever receive. Now subtract the time already spent. If you are 35, you have used roughly 306,600 hours. You have about 394,200 remaining. If you are 45, you have approximately 306,600 hours left. At 55, roughly 219,000 hours remain. But we are not done subtracting. Those numbers include sleeping hours, which consume roughly a third of your total time. Take those out and you have waking hours, the hours where you are actually conscious and capable of doing things. That cuts your remaining time significantly. Take a moment and calculate your own number. How many waking hours do you have left if you live to the average life expectancy? When you see that number, what do you feel? Does it seem like enough for everything you want to do? Does it feel scarce in a way time has never felt before? This is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to wake you up. Because that number, whatever it is, represents your complete lifetime time budget. Every decision about how to spend your hours is a decision about how to spend that finite sum. Now, here is the number that changes everything. Your personal hourly value. Most people, if asked what their time is worth, would divide their salary by their working hours. A person earning $60,000 per year, working 2,000 hours, might say their time is worth $30 an hour. But that calculation dramatically undervalues your time. Your true hourly value must account for several factors that the simple math ignores. First, consider opportunity cost. When you spend an hour on something, you are not just spending that hour. You are giving up everything else you could have done with it. The value of your time is not just what you earn. It is also what you sacrifice. Second, consider energy quality. An hour when you are sharp, focused, and energized is worth far more than an hour when you are depleted and distracted. Your high-energy hours are premium currency. Your low-energy hours are discount currency. Treating them the same is like treating gold and copper as equivalent. Third, consider finite remaining hours. Your time is becoming more scarce every day. An hour when you are 30 is more abundant than an hour when you are 50. The law of supply applies to time just as it applies to diamonds or oil. When you factor all of this in, most people discover their true hourly value is 2 to 5 times what their salary would suggest. If your salary implies $30 an hour, your true hourly value might be 60, 90, or even higher. Let me walk you through this calculation in more detail, because getting this number right will transform every decision you make. Start with your base hourly rate. Take your annual income and divide by your actual working hours, not the hours you are supposed to work, the hours you actually work. If you earn $60,000 and work 50 hours a week for 50 weeks, your base rate is $24 per hour. Now apply the energy multiplier. Not all hours are equal. When you are in peak cognitive state, you might produce 5 times the value of when you are depleted. So your peak hours might be worth $120 each, while your depleted hours are worth only $12. The average sits somewhere in between, but you need to know the range. Now apply the opportunity cost multiplier. When you spend an hour, you are not just spending that hour. You are forfeiting everything else you could do with it. If you could reasonably generate $50 of value in an hour through alternative activities, that $50 is part of your true hourly cost. Your time is worth whatever you give up to use it. Now apply the scarcity multiplier. This one requires honesty. How many productive working years do you have left? If you are 30 with 35 years ahead, your remaining work hours number around 70,000. If you are 55 with 10 years to go, you have maybe 20,000 left. Your hours are becoming scarcer. Scarcity increases value. When a man named Anthony did this calculation honestly, he was shocked. His base rate was $32 per hour. But his true hourly value, accounting for energy, opportunity, and scarcity, came to over $90. $90 an hour. That meant the 2 hours he spent watching mediocre television last night had cost him $180. That meant the 45-minute meeting that accomplished nothing had cost $67.50. That meant the hour of social media scrolling was a $90 withdrawal from his life account. Anthony started asking the question with every activity. Would I pay $90 for this? Sometimes the answer was yes. A good movie with his wife? Yes. A meaningful conversation with an old friend? Absolutely. An hour of focused work on his most important project? Of course, but often the answer was no. Would he pay $90 to attend that committee meeting? No. Would he pay $90 to scroll through arguments online? Absolutely not. Would he pay $90 to run an errand he could delegate? Why would he? The question created clarity that no productivity system had ever provided. It was not about efficiency or optimization. It was about value. Is this activity worth what I am paying for it? Why does this matter? Because once you know your number, you gain a powerful filter for every time decision. The question becomes simple. Would I pay someone my hourly rate to do this? Imagine your true hourly value is $50. Would you pay someone $50 an hour to scroll social media? Would you pay $50 an hour to sit in a meeting that could have been an email? Would you pay $50 an hour to drive across town to save $5 on a purchase? When you ask the question in money terms, the answers become obvious. And yet we make these time trades constantly without thinking. A man named Thomas learned this lesson the hard way. Thomas owned a small business that generated decent income but consumed every waking hour. He did everything himself: bookkeeping, customer service, website updates, social media. He figured he was saving money by not hiring help. Let me expand on the concept of time investments, because this is where the real wealth building happens. Financial advisors talk about compound interest as the eighth wonder of the world. Small investments, made consistently over time, grow into fortunes. The principle applies equally to time. Consider skill acquisition as a time investment. Every hour you spend learning a valuable skill pays dividends for years, potentially decades. The 20 hours you spend learning to code might save you thousands of hours over your career. The 100 hours you spend learning to communicate better might unlock opportunities that never would have existed otherwise. But not all skills are equal investments. Some skills have high time ROI, meaning the hours invested pay back many times over. These tend to be foundational skills that apply across many situations: communication, analysis, creativity, leadership, technology, health optimization. Other skills have lower time ROI. They might be useful but narrow, a skill that applies only to one specific software program, one particular hobby, one temporary situation. These are not bad investments, but they compound more slowly. Before investing time in skill building, ask yourself what the expected return is. Over the next 5 years, how many hours will this skill save me or create for me? If the answer is significantly more than the investment, proceed. If not, reconsider. Let me give you a practical framework for evaluating skill investments. I call it the 5-year return assessment. First, estimate the hours required to develop the skill to a useful level. Not mastery, just usefulness. Some skills require hundreds of hours. Others can be functional in 20. Be realistic about the investment required. Second, estimate how frequently you will use this skill once developed. Daily, weekly, monthly. The more frequent the application, the higher the return. Third, estimate the time saved or value created each time you apply the skill. Does it save you 30 minutes per use? Does it enable you to do something that was previously impossible? Does it improve the quality of your output in ways that create opportunity? Fourth, multiply frequency by value and project across 5 years. If you will use the skill weekly, saving 2 hours each time, that is 100 hours saved per year, 500 hours across 5 years. Fifth, compare projected return to required investment. If the skill requires 100 hours to develop and returns 500 hours across 5 years, that is a 5-to-1 return. If it requires 200 hours and returns 100, you are losing time on the investment. Not all skills are about time savings. Some skills create opportunities that have value beyond hours. A leadership skill might not save time directly, but might unlock promotions that change your entire trajectory. A creative skill might not be efficient, but might add meaning that transforms your experience. Include these intangible returns in your assessment. Ask not just how many hours this skill will save, but how it will change what is possible. The best skill investments often pay returns in both dimensions. A woman named Linda applied this thinking to her professional development. Her company offered many training programs. She used to attend them somewhat randomly, based on what sounded interesting or what her colleagues were doing. Then she started calculating time ROI. A 3-day course in project management certification would cost her 24 hours, but the certification would unlock project leadership roles that paid 40% more. Over a 10-year period, assuming that enabled her to command premium assignments, the return was enormous. There is another dimension to skill, investment worth considering: the concept of skill stacking. Individual skills have value, but combinations of skills create exponential value. Being good at writing is valuable. Being good at data analysis is valuable. Being good at both makes you a rare person who can translate complex findings into compelling narratives. The stack is worth more than the sum of its parts. When choosing skill investments, consider not just the standalone value, but the stack value. How does this skill combine with what you already know? Does it create a rare and valuable combination? Does it fill a gap in your capabilities that is holding back other skills? The most successful people I know are not world-class at any single skill. They are unusually good at several skills that combine into something unique. Their competitive advantage is not depth in one area, but breadth across several areas that interact powerfully. What skills, combined with what you already know, would create exponential value? A 2-day workshop on a specific software tool would cost 16 hours, but that tool was being phased out by her company. The return was essentially zero. An ongoing mentorship commitment would cost 4 hours a month, 48 hours a year. But the mentor had connections and wisdom that could accelerate her career by years. The return was incalculable, but clearly positive. Linda stopped attending training randomly. She started investing her learning time strategically, calculating returns before committing hours. Within 3 years, Linda had leapfrogged colleagues who had been at the company longer. Not because she worked more hours, because she invested her development hours more wisely. What skills would pay the highest dividends if you invested time in developing them? Relationship investment deserves special attention. Unlike skills, relationships cannot be built quickly or efficiently. They require what the author David Brooks calls wasted time. Time spent without agenda. Time spent just being together. Time that looks unproductive, but is actually building something invaluable. But here too, not all relationships deserve equal investment. Some relationships are time assets. They enrich your life, support your growth, and create mutual value. Time invested in these relationships compounds over years into deep friendship, meaningful partnership, and genuine community. Other relationships are time debts. They drain energy, demand maintenance without reciprocity, and leave you poorer than before. Time spent on these relationships is not invested. It is lost. A man named Stephen audited his relationships with the same rigor he applied to his finances. He listed everyone who had significant time claim on his life. Then he asked 2 questions about each one. Does this relationship energize me or drain me? Is this relationship reciprocal or one-directional? What he found was illuminating. About 1/3 of his significant relationships were clearly time assets. These were friendships where both parties invested and both parties benefited. where time together left him better than before, where the relationship was growing rather than stagnating. Another third were neutral, neither draining nor energizing, neither growing nor dying. These relationships existed out of proximity or history rather than current value. The final third were time debts, relationships where he gave consistently and received rarely, where interactions left him depleted, where he invested out of obligation rather than genuine connection. Stephen made changes. He increased investment in his time-asset relationships, scheduling more frequent contact, prioritizing them over obligations. He maintained his neutral relationships at a lower level of investment, keeping them alive without pouring in hours. He had honest conversations with some of his time-debt relationships, establishing boundaries or, in a few cases, letting the relationships fade. The result was not fewer relationships, it was better ones. By investing more in relationships that compounded and less in relationships that depleted, Stephen's social life became richer while actually requiring less total time. Who are your time-asset relationships? Who are your time-debt relationships? And is your investment allocation aligned with those categories? System investment is another high ROI category. A system is any process, routine, or structure that produces value repeatedly without requiring you to reinvent it each time. When you create a morning routine, you build a system. You do not have to decide each morning what to do. The system runs automatically, producing consistent results. When you establish a workflow for recurring tasks, you build a system. The second time through is faster than the first. The 10th time is almost effortless. When you create templates, checklists, or protocols, you build systems. These tools encode your learning so you do not have to relearn each time. System building takes time up front. It is easier in the moment to just do the task than to step back and systematize it, but the investment pays compound returns. An hour spent building a system might save 10 minutes on every future occurrence. If that task recurs daily, you have earned back your hour in 6 days and profited from the system for years. A woman named Karen ran a consulting practice. She noticed that she was creating similar proposals for similar clients, yet spending hours on each one as if starting from scratch. She invested a full day, 8 hours, building a proposal system, templates for different service types, libraries of past language she could draw from, checklists for what each proposal needed, workflows for review and approval. After that day, proposals that used to take 3 hours took 45 minutes. She created roughly 50 proposals a year. That meant she was saving over 100 hours annually from a single 8-hour investment. But the benefits went beyond time savings. Her proposals became more consistent. Her hit rate improved because she could spend more time on customization and less on recreation. Her stress decreased because proposals no longer felt like major undertakings. Karen learned to look at every recurring task through the system-building lens. Could she create a template, a checklist, a workflow, an automation? Each system she built freed future hours for higher-value activities. What recurring tasks in your life could be systematized? Where could an upfront time investment pay dividends for years? Now we come to the skill that protects all other skills, the art of saying no. One day his accountant did some interesting math. "Thomas," she said, "you bill your clients $200 an hour for your expertise. Yet you spend at least 15 hours per week on administrative tasks that a part-time assistant could handle for $20 an hour. You are losing money by saving money. Thomas was confused. How am I losing money? Because those 15 hours of your $200 time spent on $20 tasks represents a weekly loss of $2,700 in opportunity cost. You could be doing client work or business development or resting, so you are sharper for high-value activities. Instead, you are filing receipts and updating spreadsheets. Thomas sat with that math for a long time. He had been so focused on not spending money that he had been hemorrhaging time. He was time poor while trying to stay money rich. And the math showed he was actually becoming poorer by both measures. Within a month, Thomas hired a part-time assistant. Within 6 months, his revenue had increased by 40%, while his working hours decreased. He had learned to stop spending premium currency on discount tasks. What $20 tasks are eating your $200 hours? Let us go deeper into the economics of time. Just like with money, there is time debt and time wealth. Understanding the difference will transform how you approach every commitment. Time debt is exactly what it sounds like. It is borrowed time that charges interest. When you neglect your health, you are taking on time debt. Every skipped workout, every poor meal, every night of insufficient sleep creates a debt that will be repaid later with interest. The interest comes as reduced energy, increased sick days, and potentially shortened lifespan. When you leave projects unfinished, you are taking on time debt. That hanging task occupies mental space. It requires repeated decisions not to deal with it. It adds friction to your days. The interest accumulates as stress and cognitive overhead. When you allow clutter to build in your environment, you are taking on time debt. Every item out of place costs you search time, decision time, and mental energy. The interest compounds daily. When you make commitments without margin, you are taking on time debt. You borrow from your future self, assuming tomorrow's you will somehow have more time than today's you. That debt always comes due. Time wealth is the opposite. It is invested time that pays dividends. When you build a system once, you create time wealth. That system runs without you, saving you hours forever. The dividends compound. When you invest in a skill, you create time wealth. The hours you spend learning eventually let you do things faster and better. The dividends pay out across years. When you invest in relationships, you create time wealth. Strong relationships create support, joy, and leverage. The dividends enrich every other hour. When you invest in your health, you create time wealth. A healthy body gives you more energy, more sharp hours, potentially more years. The dividends are massive. Take a moment to consider your own situation. Make a mental list of your time debts. What have you been neglecting that is charging you interest? What unfinished projects are haunting you? What cluttered corners are costing you daily? Now consider your time assets. What systems have you built that pay dividends? What skills have you invested in? What relationships are enriching your hours? If your debts outweigh your assets, you are time poor, regardless of how many hours you have available. If your assets outweigh your debts, you are time wealthy, even when your schedule is full. There is also a state called time bankruptcy. This is when your debts have so overwhelmed your assets that you cannot recover through normal means. You know you are in time bankruptcy when you feel constantly behind, when your obligations exceed your available hours, when you cannot remember the last time you had margin. Time bankruptcy requires drastic intervention. Just like financial bankruptcy, You cannot pay your way out incrementally. You must stop, declare insolvency, and restructure everything. This often means radical pruning of commitments, uncomfortable conversations about expectations, and a complete rebuild of how you allocate your hours. If you are in time bankruptcy right now, this audiobook will help you find a path out. But be honest with yourself about how severe your situation is. Pretending you just need a few productivity tips, when you actually need a complete restructuring, will only sink you deeper. Now comes the part that most people resist, the audit. If you want to manage your money, you must know where it goes. The same is true for time. And just like looking at your bank statements can be painful, looking at where your hours actually go can be confronting. For the next 7 days, I want you to track every 30-minute block of your waking time. Every single one. Not what you plan to do. Not what you wish you had done. What actually happened. This is the equivalent of keeping receipts for every purchase. It creates the raw data you need to understand your real spending patterns. As you track, categorize each block into one of 5 categories. Investment time is time spent that will pay dividends later. Learning a skill, building a relationship, creating a system, exercising, deep work on important projects. This is time that multiplies. Necessary expense time is time that must be spent but does not multiply. Commuting, basic maintenance, administrative tasks. These are the fixed costs of life. Discretionary expense time is time that does not multiply but that you consciously choose to spend for enjoyment or rest. Watching a movie you intentionally selected. Having dinner with friends. Playing with your children. This is time spent, not invested, but spent with awareness. Waste time is time that disappeared without intention or enjoyment. Scrolling without purpose. Watching something you did not choose. Meetings that accomplished nothing. Arguments that changed nothing. This is time that vanished without value. Stolen time is the most insidious category. These are hours committed by past you without present you's consent. Obligations you fell into rather than chose. Expectations you never consciously agreed to meet. Tasks that appeared on your plate without you putting them there. This is time taken from you by default. A woman named Jennifer did this exercise, and what she discovered shocked her. Jennifer considered herself busy. She felt like she had no time for anything. She complained constantly about being overwhelmed. When she looked at her 7 days of data, she found that she had only 8 hours total in the investment category. 8 hours out of roughly 100 waking hours. 8%. She found 22 hours in the necessary expense category. That seemed reasonable. But she found 31 hours in the waste category. 31 hours of time that had vanished without intention. Almost 3 times more than her investment time. The stolen time category held 19 hours. 19 hours of commitments she could not remember agreeing to. Meetings she attended out of habit. Tasks she did because they had always been done. Expectations she met because nobody had ever questioned them. Jennifer had been telling herself she did not have time for what mattered. The data showed something different. She had plenty of time. She was just spending it on things that did not matter. How do you think your audit will turn out? Before you know, you cannot change. Once you have your audit data, you can build your budget. This is where intention meets reality, where you decide on purpose how your hours will be spent. Start by mapping your fixed costs. These are the non-negotiables. Sleep should be 7 to 9 hours. Let us say 8. That is 56 hours per week committed before you begin. Work, if you work full-time, is typically 40 to 50 hours, including commute. Let us say 45. Basic personal maintenance like eating, hygiene, and household tasks might be 15 hours. Add those up. 56 plus 45 plus 15 is 116 hours. Your week has 168 hours. That leaves 52 hours of discretionary time. 52 hours. Does that number surprise you? Most people feel like they have almost no discretionary time. Yet even with sleep and full-time work and basic maintenance, you have over 50 hours to allocate as you choose. Where are those 52 hours going? That is what your audit will reveal. Now comes the principle that changes everything. Pay yourself first. In personal finance, this means moving money to savings before you pay any other bills. It ensures you build wealth instead of just surviving. The same principle applies to time. Most people fill their schedules with obligations first, and then hope there is time left over for what matters. There never is. Obligations expand to fill available time. If you give them first priority, they will consume everything. Instead, schedule your investments first. Block the time for exercise before work obligations can claim it. Reserve the hours for deep work before meetings can colonize them. Protect the time for relationships before busyness can erode it. This feels uncomfortable at first. It feels selfish or irresponsible to schedule your important things before other people's urgent things. But this is exactly what time-wealthy people do. They decide what matters and protect it first. Everything else must fit in the remaining space. Consider using a framework like the 50 to 30-20 rule adapted for time. 50% of your discretionary time goes to necessities and obligations that must be handled, but that you choose consciously. 30% goes to growth and investment, the activities that build your future. 20% goes to pure enjoyment, guilt-free rest and recreation. With 52 discretionary hours, that means roughly 26 hours for chosen necessities, 16 hours for growth, and 10 hours for joy. Does your current allocation look anything like that? If not, what would need to change? Not all time is created equal. This is one of the most important lessons in time economics. Your body runs on a roughly 24-hour cycle called the circadian rhythm. Throughout this cycle, your energy, focus, and cognitive capacity rise and fall in predictable patterns. Some hours are premium currency. Some hours are discount currency. For most people, there are 2 to 4 hours each day when they are at their cognitive peak. Mental clarity is highest. Focus comes easily. Complex workflows. These are your golden hours. They are worth more than all your other hours combined in terms of what you can accomplish. The problem is that most people do not know when their golden hours occur, and even those who sense them often squander them on low-value activities. A man named David realized this when he started tracking not just his time, but his energy. David was a writer. His income depended on producing quality work. Yet he was struggling. He would sit down to write, and the words would not come. He blamed himself. He wondered if he had lost his talent. Then he noticed a pattern. His best writing always happened in the morning, between 7 and 11. By afternoon, he was producing garbage that required extensive revision. By evening, he could barely string sentences together. David looked at how he had been structuring his days. He woke at 8 answered emails until 10, then attended meetings until noon. By the time he sat down to write, his golden hours were already spent. He was trying to produce premium work during discount hours. David restructured radically. He began waking at 6 and writing immediately, before checking any email or attending any meeting. He protected 7 to 11 as sacred writing time. Meetings and emails were pushed to afternoon, when his energy flagged anyway. His output doubled within a month, not because he worked more hours, because he matched his highest value work to his highest value hours. What are your golden hours? When do you feel sharpest and most capable? And what have you been scheduling during those precious windows? The hour grading concept extends beyond just energy. Consider rating each activity by 3 dimensions. First, energy match. Does this activity require the kind of energy you currently have? Deep thinking requires mental peak. Routine tasks can be done while depleted. Second, outcome impact. What does completing this activity accomplish? Does it move you towards something important, or is it just motion without progress? Third, replaceability. Could someone else do this, or does it require you specifically? The more replaceable the task, the lower its value in your schedule. High-value hours are those when all 3 dimensions align. You are doing work that requires your current energy state, produces meaningful outcomes, and can only be done by you. Low-value hours are those when none align. You are doing work that does not match your energy, produces little impact, and could be done by anyone. Most people let low-value activities invade their high-value hours because they never made the distinction. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Now we come to the skill that protects all other skills. The art of saying no. Every yes is a time expenditure. When you agree to something, you are writing a check against your time account. The problem is that most people say yes automatically. It feels rude to decline. It feels selfish. It feels like letting people down. But consider what yes really means. When you say yes to something you do not want to do, you are saying no to something you do want to do. When you say yes to a meeting that should have been an email, you are saying no to an hour of meaningful work. When you say yes to an acquaintance's request, you might be saying no to time with someone you love. Every yes has a cost. The question is whether you are paying that cost consciously. There was a woman named Sarah who could not say no. She was known as reliable, helpful, always available. Her calendar was a solid block of commitments. People praised her generosity with her time. Sarah had a breakdown at 42, complete exhaustion. Her body simply refused to continue. In therapy, she examined how she had reached this point. The answer was yes. Thousands of yeses that she did not mean. Yeses that cost her sleep, health, relationships, and any sense of self. Her therapist gave her an exercise. For 1 month, Sarah was not allowed to say yes to any new request immediately. She had to say, "Let me check my calendar and get back to you." Then she had to wait 24 hours before responding. In that 24 hours, Sarah would calculate the true cost of the request. Not just the event itself, but the preparation, the travel, the recovery. She would ask herself if she would be glad to have done this thing, or if she would resent it. She would ask what she would have to sacrifice to make room. With this buffer, Sarah discovered that most requests evaporated on their own. People found other solutions. The urgency faded, and the requests she did accept were ones she genuinely chose. Sarah now has an empty calendar 2 days a week. She protects this emptiness fiercely. She no longer considers herself helpful. She considers herself intentional. And the breakdown never returned. What would happen if you could not say yes immediately? How many commitments would disappear if you gave yourself time to count the cost? Here are some frameworks for declining without guilt. The soft no involves expressing appreciation while redirecting. Something like, "Thank you so much for thinking of me, but I am not able to commit to that right now." No lengthy justification, no elaborate excuses, just appreciation and decline. The deferred no creates space without closing doors. I cannot make this work in my current season, but please keep me in mind for the future. This is honest and leaves the relationship intact. The alternative no offers value without accepting cost. I am not the right person for this. But have you considered asking whoever might be better suited? You help without sacrificing your time. The honest no states your reality simply. I have committed to protecting my calendar right now, and that means declining most new requests. I hope you understand. Direct, boundaried, and complete. Notice what all of these lack. They lack lengthy explanations. They lack apologies. They lack negotiation. The most effective no is clean. It does not open space for argument. It simply states reality and moves on. People-pleasing is a form of time poverty. When you cannot decline, you have given control of your time to anyone who asks. You have made their priorities more important than yours. You have declared their time more valuable than yours. This is not kindness. This is the opposite of kindness. Because when you are depleted and overcommitted, you have nothing left to give anyone. Your yeses become hollow. Your presence becomes distracted. Your generosity becomes resentment. The kindest thing you can do is protect your time so that when you do give it, you give it fully. Now let us distinguish between spending time and investing time. This distinction will determine whether your hours compound or evaporate. Spending time is consumption. You exchange hours for immediate experience that ends when the experience ends. Watching a movie is spending time. Scrolling social media is spending time. Most entertainment is spending time. There is nothing wrong with spending time. It is necessary for rest and enjoyment. But spent time does not multiply. Investing time is different. When you invest time, you exchange hours now for returns later. The investment may mature quickly or slowly, but it produces something beyond the initial expenditure. Learning a skill is investing time. The hours you spend learning to code, speak a language, or play an instrument pay dividends forever. Every future hour is enhanced by the capability you built. Building a relationship is investing time. The hours you spend deepening a friendship create a resource you can draw on for decades. Support, joy, collaboration, and love compound over time. Creating a system is investing time. The hours you spend automating a task, building a process, or establishing a routine eliminate future hours of repetitive work. Systems are the compound interest of time. Writing is investing time. A book, article, or guide you create once can provide value to thousands of people for years. Your hours multiply through scale. Teaching is investing time. When you help others develop skills, your impact extends through their future hours. You multiply your effectiveness through leverage. Now consider your current time allocation. What percentage goes to spending versus investing? Most people, if they are honest, spend far more than they invest. They consume entertainment, engage in activities that end when the activity ends, and wonder why their lives feel stuck. The formula for a time-wealthy life is simple. Increase the ratio of invested hours to spent hours. Not to zero spending, because rest and enjoyment matter, but to a meaningful ratio where investment time compounds faster than spending time depletes. Let me give you a framework for thinking about this ratio. Consider dividing your discretionary time into 3 categories. Growth time, which includes all investment activities, skills, relationships, systems, health, anything that builds future capacity. Rest time, which includes genuine restoration, sleep, exercise, Sabbath, entertainment that actually refreshes you. Waste time, which includes everything else. Scrolling without purpose, activities that neither build nor restore, hours that vanish without trace. Most people, when they track honestly, find their ratio is something like 10% growth, 30% rest, 60% waste. That ratio leads to stagnation. You are depleting faster than you are building. Over years, that compounds into a life that feels stuck. A healthier ratio might be 30% growth, 40% rest, 30% waste. Some waste is inevitable and even acceptable. You are human, not an optimization machine. But the balance has shifted. You are building faster than you are depleting. Over years, that compounds into a life of increasing capacity and possibility. The most time-wealthy people often operate at 40% growth, 45% rest, 15% waste. They invest heavily, restore adequately, and waste minimally. This is not superhuman discipline. It is the natural result of awareness. When you see time as currency, waste becomes painful. You notice it happening. You correct course quickly. What is your current ratio? If you tracked your discretionary time for a week, what percentages would you find? And what would you like those percentages to be? A man named James understood this intuitively, but had never articulated it. James was a software developer who felt like he was running in place. Same skills, same level, same impact, year after year. His turning point came when he tracked where his non-work hours went. He was spending 40 hours a week on entertainment that produced nothing. Video games, television, social media. Not because he loved these things, but because they were there. James made a radical decision. He would redirect half those hours to investment. 20 hours per week would still go to pure entertainment because he needed rest. But 20 hours would go to building things, learning new programming languages, contributing to open source projects, building side projects that interested him. Within 18 months, James had tripled his salary by switching companies. Not because he worked more hours, because his investment hours had compounded into capabilities that commanded premium compensation. But here is what James did not expect. The entertainment hours he kept became more enjoyable. Because he was building things he cared about during his growth time, he felt less need to escape during his rest time. He could watch a movie without guilt because he had earned the rest. He could play a game without anxiety because his investment time was protected. The irony of time investment is that it makes time spending better. When you know you are building something meaningful, relaxation becomes restorative instead of numbing. When you know you are growing, rest feels earned instead of stolen. Where could you redirect even 5 hours a week from spending to investing? What would compound over the next 5 years? The key is understanding return on investment for time. Not all investments pay equally. A skill that is in high demand pays better than a skill with limited application. A relationship with someone who reciprocates pays better than a relationship with someone who only takes. A system that automates frequent tasks pays better than one that handles rare situations. Before investing time, ask yourself what return you expect and over what time frame. Some investments pay quickly. Learning to use a tool that saves you an hour a day pays back within weeks. Some investments pay slowly. Building expertise in a field might take years before the return manifests. Neither is wrong, but know what you are choosing. Consider also the concept of time leverage. This is where your invested hour multiplies through reach or scale. When you write something that helps 1,000 people, your hour has more leverage than when you help one person directly. When you build a system that a team uses daily, your hour has more leverage than solving the problem once yourself. When you teach a skill that someone else applies for years, your hour lives on beyond your effort. High-leverage time investments are how some people seem to accomplish so much more than others with the same 24 hours. They are not working harder. They are investing in places where their hours multiply. A woman named Rebecca discovered leverage accidentally. She was frustrated with answering the same questions from new team members over and over, so she spent one weekend creating a comprehensive onboarding guide. Every answer, every process, every common question addressed. That weekend cost her 16 hours, but over the next 3 years, that guide saved an estimated 2 hours per new hire for dozens of new team members. Her 16-hour investment produced over 500 hours of saved time across the organization. That is a 30-to-1 return. No financial investment compounds that quickly. Rebecca started looking for other leverage opportunities. Could she create training that scaled? Could she build documentation that multiplied? Could she automate processes that ran without her? Within 5 years, Rebecca had built so much leverage into her role that she was promoted to lead a team twice the size of her previous responsibilities. Not because she worked more hours than her peers, because her hours accomplished more. Where could you create leverage in your life? What hours could you invest that would multiply through reach, scale, or compounding? Now let us address the expenses you never authorized. These are the time expenditures running on autopilot, deducting from your account without your conscious approval. Let me expand on something critical here: the concept of decision fatigue and its relationship to time. Every decision you make depletes a finite resource. The more decisions you make in a day, the worse your subsequent decisions become. This is not weakness, it is biology. Your brain has limited capacity for conscious choice. When you fail to systematize recurring decisions, you pay the cost every time. What to wear, what to eat, when to exercise, how to structure your morning. Each decision, individually, seems trivial. Together, they drain the capacity you need for decisions that actually matter. Time-wealthy people ruthlessly systematize trivial decisions. They wear similar clothes to eliminate choice. They eat similar meals to avoid daily decisions. They follow established routines, so mornings run on autopilot. They remove decisions wherever possible, so their limited decision-making capacity goes to decisions that matter. A man named Charles was CEO of a growing company. He made hundreds of decisions daily: strategic choices, personnel matters, resource allocations. By evening, he was so depleted that he could not decide what to have for dinner. Charles started noticing that his worst decisions came in the afternoon, when his decision budget was nearly spent. He was approving things he should have questioned. He was avoiding choices he should have made. His depleted state was costing the company. Charles systematized everything he could. He established a weekly menu, so dinner required no decision. He reduced his wardrobe to 5 variations of the same outfit. He created a morning routine so rigid that he could complete it on autopilot. He batched similar decisions so they consumed less total capacity. The result was transformative. Not just more decision capacity for work, but better decisions overall. By eliminating hundreds of trivial daily choices, Charles arrived at the important decisions with more mental resources. What decisions are you making repeatedly that could be systematized? What trivial choices are draining capacity you need for important ones? Now let us distinguish between spending time and investing time. This distinction will determine whether your hours compound or evaporate. Think of them as time subscriptions. Just like you might have forgotten recurring charges on your credit card, you have forgotten recurring claims on your calendar. There are meeting subscriptions, weekly meetings that exist because they have always existed, standing calls that stand only because nobody sat them down, recurring commitments that nobody has questioned since they were established. There are task subscriptions, things you do regularly without ever asking if they are still necessary, reports nobody reads, updates nobody needs, maintenance on things that could be eliminated. There are relationship subscriptions, ongoing expenditures of time for people who drain without refilling, not meaningful relationships that enrich you, but obligatory ones that persist through inertia. There are digital subscriptions, the apps that steal minutes throughout the day, the notifications that fracture attention, the feeds that turn 5-minute checks into hour-long scrolling sessions. The solution is zero-based time budgeting. Just like zero-based financial budgeting forces you to justify every expense from scratch, zero-based time budgeting forces you to justify every commitment from scratch. For every recurring time commitment, ask a simple question. If this did not already exist, would I create it? If this meeting were not already on my calendar, would I schedule it? If this task were not already part of my routine, would I add it? If this relationship demanded my time fresh today, would I say yes? Any commitment that fails the zero-based test should be eliminated or renegotiated. Not eventually. Now. These unauthorized subscriptions are draining your account every single week. Every week you delay is another week of charges you did not approve. A woman named Rachel applied zero-based thinking to her calendar and discovered something disturbing. 14 hours a week of her time was going to commitments she would not choose if choosing fresh. 14 hours. That is nearly 2 full working days. That is 728 hours per year. That is over 2 years of work hour equivalent over a typical career. Rachel spent several uncomfortable weeks having conversations she had been avoiding. She left a committee she had served on for years but no longer cared about. She stepped back from a friendship that had become one-sided. She unsubscribed from newsletters she never read. She deleted apps that consumed without contributing. The discomfort passed. The extra hours remained. What subscriptions are you paying that you would never sign up for today? Let me share a visualization with you. I want you to close your eyes for a moment, or let your gaze soften if you are somewhere that requires visual attention. Picture your time as water flowing from a faucet. This faucet runs constantly. It cannot be turned off. Water pours out every second of every day. Now, picture a collection of containers beneath the faucet. There is a large container labeled Essentials. Water must flow there to keep you alive. Sleeping, eating, basic maintenance. This container fills whether you direct the water there or not. There is a container labeled Work. For most people, a significant portion of the water must flow here to pay for the Essentials container. This one also fills out of necessity. But look at the other containers. There is one labeled Growth, another labeled Joy, another labeled Relationships, another labeled Meaning. Now look at the floor around the containers. There is water everywhere, pooling, evaporating, disappearing into drains. This is the water that did not make it into any container. The time that vanished without direction. See the small containers labeled Scroll and Distraction and Worry and Friction. Notice how much water is flowing into these. Notice that nobody is directing the water there. It just goes by default. Now imagine you could control the flow. Imagine channels that direct the water exactly where you want it to go. Imagine containers filling with what matters while the floor stays dry. Imagine every drop landing somewhere intentional. This is what a time budget does. It creates the channels. It directs the flow. It ensures the water reaches the right containers before it can pool uselessly on the floor. When you open your eyes, carry this image with you. Your time is flowing right now. As you listen to these words, where is it landing? What containers are filling? We need to talk about margin, empty space, buffer. The white space on the calendar that most people treat as a problem to solve rather than a feature to protect. Financial advisors recommend an emergency fund. 3 to 6 months of expenses sitting in an account doing nothing, just waiting. This money feels unproductive. It is not invested. It is not working. It is just there. But that money is doing something crucial. It is providing security. It is creating space for the unexpected. It is preventing a temporary crisis from becoming a permanent catastrophe. Time needs the same thing. You need time margins, empty space, uncommitted hours, buffer between events, time that is not scheduled, not allocated, not promised to anyone. Most people resist this. Empty time feels wasteful. It feels inefficient. It feels like something that should be filled. And so they pack their schedules tight. Back-to-back meetings, events butting against events. No space between anything. This creates fragility. Any small disruption cascades into crisis. A meeting that runs long destroys the entire afternoon. An unexpected task has no room to land. A simple illness becomes a catastrophe because there was no buffer to absorb it. More importantly, packed schedules prevent the kind of spontaneous possibility that makes life rich. There is no room for the unexpected conversation, no space for the idea that needs to percolate, no capacity for the opportunity that arrives unannounced. A man named Robert ran a startup with a packed calendar. Every 15-minute block was assigned. He considered this efficiency. He was proud of his optimization. Then his daughter asked if she could show him something. Just a quick thing. A drawing she had made. It would only take a minute. Robert was between calls. He had exactly 3 minutes before the next one began. "Okay," he said, "but quick." His daughter showed him the drawing and started explaining it. "This is our house, and this is you, and this is me, and this is the dog we are going to get someday, and this is the sky. And I used 3 different blues because the sky is not just one color." Robert's phone buzzed. His next call was starting. He cut his daughter off mid-sentence, said, "It's great, honey," and went back to his office. That night, Robert could not sleep. He had optimized away the moment when his daughter wanted to share her art. He had scheduled himself out of his own life. The efficiency he was so proud of had cost him something he could not get back. Robert now keeps 2 hours every day, completely unscheduled. He calls it margin time. Sometimes he uses it for unexpected work, sometimes for rest. Sometimes his daughter shows him a drawing, and he listens to every word about why the sky needs 3 different blues. How much margin do you have? Not unused time that feels anxious and guilty, but protected empty space that allows life to happen. Let me go deeper on this concept because it may be the most counterintuitive idea in this entire audiobook. We live in a culture that celebrates busyness, that equates a packed schedule with importance, that treats empty space as wasted space. But consider what happens in nature. A forest needs clearings. Without them, light cannot reach the ground. New growth cannot emerge. The ecosystem stagnates. The clearings are not wasted space. They are the space where new life begins. Your life needs clearings too. Empty hours where nothing is planned. Time when you are not producing, not consuming, not maintaining, just being. In these clearings, creativity awakens. Ideas emerge. Solutions to problems that have been plaguing you suddenly appear. Not because you were working on them, because you finally had space for them to surface. In these clearings, relationships deepen. A conversation that was supposed to be brief becomes meaningful because neither person is rushing to the next thing. A meal that was supposed to be quick becomes memorable because there is nowhere else to be. In these clearings, you remember who you are. Not the worker, the parent, the spouse, the friend, the committee member. Just you. The person underneath all the roles. The human being underneath all the human doing. Most people have not experienced a clearing in years. They have not had unscheduled time that did not feel guilty or anxious. They have forgotten what it feels like to be unhurried. They have lost touch with the person they are when they are not rushing somewhere. What would it take for you to create a clearing? Not a vacation, not a weekend away, just a few hours. Every week when nothing is planned. When you could stay in bed reading if you wanted to. When you could sit on your porch and watch the clouds. When you could follow a whim to somewhere unexpected. These clearings are not optional for time-wealthy living. They are essential. Without them, even the most carefully allocated time becomes grinding. The machine runs without rest until it breaks. Consider the concept of cadence. In music, cadence refers to the progression that creates a sense of completion and rest. Without cadence, music would be an endless stream of notes with no resolution. It would be exhausting to listen to. Your life needs cadence too. Daily rhythms of exertion and rest, weekly rhythms of work and Sabbath, seasonal rhythms of intensity and recovery. Without cadence, life becomes an endless stream of demands with no resolution. It is exhausting to live. Build cadence into your time budget. Not just margin, but rhythm. Periods of focused intensity, followed by periods of genuine restoration. Like breathing in and breathing out. Neither works without the other. The paradox is that feeling busy is often a sign of lacking margin, not lacking time. When you have no buffer, every moment feels urgent. When you have no space, every demand feels pressing. The busyness is not because you have too much to do. It is because you have no room for anything unexpected. Build margin into your days, space between meetings, unscheduled mornings, protected evenings. Let this margin feel generous, even wasteful. It is not waste. It is the buffer that prevents crisis and creates possibility. Let me expand on the concept of time thieves, because awareness of them is your first line of defense. Digital time thieves are the most insidious. They are designed by brilliant engineers who understand human psychology better than we understand ourselves. Every notification, every infinite scroll, every autoplay video is engineered to capture your attention and hold it hostage. Social media is not a tool you use. It is a machine that uses you. Your attention is the product being sold. Your hours are the price being extracted. The apps are free because you are paying with something more valuable than money. The average person checks their phone 96 times a day. That is once every 10 minutes of waking time. Each check creates a context switch. Each context switch costs mental energy. Each cost depletes the capacity for meaningful work. And it is not just the time spent scrolling. It is the time lost to distracted thinking afterward. It is the fractured attention that cannot fully focus. It is the continuous partial presence that means you are never fully anywhere. A man named Ben conducted an experiment. For 1 month, he tracked every phone pickup. He logged the time spent and the supposed purpose. The results horrified him. He was averaging 4 hours per day on his phone. 4 hours. 28 hours per week. That is more than 1,000 hours per year. More than 40 days of waking time every year, staring at a screen that was designed to addict him. Most of those pickups had no purpose. He would grab his phone without deciding to. He would open apps without intention. He would scroll without choosing to scroll. His hands were moving on autopilot while his mind was asleep. Ben decided to reclaim those 1,000 hours. He deleted social media apps from his phone. He could still access them from his computer, but the friction of that access reduced his usage by 80%. He turned off all notifications except calls and texts from family. He set his phone to grayscale, making the colorful apps less visually appealing. Within a month, his phone usage dropped to 90 minutes per day. He had reclaimed 17 hours per week. That is almost 900 hours per year. 900 hours he redirected to reading, exercise, conversation, and creative work. What would you do with 900 extra hours per year? Meeting time thieves are another major category. The modern workplace is drowning in meetings. Meetings to plan. Meetings. Meetings to discuss what should have been emails. Meetings where 3 people need to be there and 12 are invited. Research suggests the average professional spends over 23 hours per week in meetings. 23 hours. More than half of a traditional work week, and most of those meetings are unnecessary, too long, or poorly run. Ask yourself how many of your meetings pass the replacement test. If this meeting disappeared entirely, would anything bad happen? If the answer is no, the meeting should not exist. Ask how many pass the presence test. Do I personally need to be here, or could I get a summary afterward? If someone else's presence could substitute for yours, you do not need to be there. Ask how many pass the efficiency test. Could the purpose of this meeting be accomplished in half the time? In most cases, the answer is yes. Meetings expand to fill their scheduled time. A 1-hour meeting will take an hour even if the content could be covered in 20 minutes. A woman named Audrey took on her meeting culture. She audited every recurring meeting on her calendar. She asked the 3 tests of each one. What she found was startling. Of her 16 weekly recurring meetings, only 4 required her personal presence for their full duration. 3 could be eliminated entirely. 5 could be reduced to half their length. 4 could be handled via email or brief check-ins. Audrey had the uncomfortable conversations. She declined some meetings. She reduced others. She sent a memo explaining that she would read summaries instead of attending certain discussions. Her colleagues were initially confused. Then they noticed something. Audrey was more responsive to emails. Her project work was higher quality. She seemed less stressed and more present. Several of them asked what she was doing differently. Within 6 months, Audrey's example had spread. Her team had reduced total meeting time by 30%. Productivity had increased, and interestingly, collaboration had improved rather than suffering. The meetings that remained were more focused, more necessary, and more effective. What would happen if you audited your meetings this ruthlessly? Obligation time thieves are perhaps the most difficult to address. These are the commitments that seem non-negotiable, but actually are not. The things you do because you have always done them. The expectations you meet because someone, sometime, established them. Consider the family traditions that no longer serve anyone. The holiday gatherings that exhaust rather than rejuvenate. The routines that persist by inertia rather than intention. Consider the professional expectations that were never questioned, the reports that nobody reads, the processes that outlived their purpose, the tasks that continue because stopping them would require someone to make a decision. Consider the social obligations that accumulated over years, the groups you joined and never left, the subscriptions you maintain out of guilt, the relationships you invest in without return. Each of these, individually, may seem small. An hour here, 2 hours there. But they compound, layer upon layer of obligation, none of which you consciously chose, all of which extract time you could spend on things that matter. A man named George turned 60 and realized he had been living someone else's life. Not dramatically, subtly. Through thousands of small obligations he had absorbed without deciding. He played golf every Saturday because his father had played golf every Saturday. He did not particularly enjoy golf. He had never stopped to ask if he wanted to continue. He attended church every Sunday out of habit rather than faith. He had stopped finding meaning in the services decades ago. But leaving felt like betrayal. He met his college friends for dinner 4 times a year, flights across the country, weekends consumed. These friendships had calcified. The conversations were scripts they had recited 100 times. But stopping felt like admitting the friendships were dead. George added up the hours. Golf, 4 hours plus travel, 48 weeks a year, nearly 200 hours annually. Church, 3 hours counting the social time, 50 weeks a year, 150 hours. College dinners, 16 hours each trip, 4 trips, 64 hours plus travel and recovery, nearly 500 hours a year on activities he had never consciously chosen and no longer enjoyed. George made changes. He quit golf and took up woodworking, something he had always wanted to learn. He stopped attending church and started hiking on Sunday mornings, where he found more spiritual renewal than he had in years of services. He talked honestly with his college friends and discovered 2 of them felt the same way he did. They redesigned their gatherings into something smaller and more meaningful. George's life at 62 looks nothing like his life at 60. Not because anything external changed, because he finally asked what obligations were actually serving him and let go of the ones that were not. What obligations are you serving that are not serving you? There is also a state called time bankruptcy. This is when your debts have so overwhelmed your assets that you cannot recover through normal means. You know you are in time bankruptcy when you feel constantly behind, when your obligations exceed your available hours, when you cannot remember the last time you had margin. When you never rest, you do not become more productive. You become less. Your cognitive capacity degrades. Your creativity dries up. Your decision-making suffers. You produce more output of lower quality at increasing personal cost. When you build Sabbath into your time budget, whether a full day or simply periods of intentional non-productivity, you create the conditions for sustainable output. Rest is not stolen time. Rest is invested time. It pays dividends in all the hours that follow. Now let us address something uncomfortable. Your time is becoming more valuable every day. This seems counterintuitive. Surely time is time. An hour now is an hour later. But consider the economics. Your supply of remaining time decreases with every passing day. You have less of it. And when supply decreases while demand stays constant, price rises. Meanwhile, your wisdom and capability generally increase. You know more. You can do more. Each hour is more potent than the last. The combination creates a powerful truth. Your hours right now are the most valuable hours you have ever had. They are scarce and potent simultaneously. Yet most people treat their current hours as cheap. They assume they will have time someday. They defer what matters until later. They spend today's valuable hours on worthless activities because tomorrow's hours seem infinite. The someday trap has stolen more lives than any other thief. Someday I will write that book. Someday I will start that business. Someday I will repair that relationship. Someday I will prioritize my health. But someday is not a day on the calendar. Someday is where dreams go to die. The person you are becoming someday does not have more time than the person you are today. They have less. There is a version of you 1 year from now who will look back at this moment, at this day, when you had an entire year stretched before you, at this hour when everything was still possible. What will that future you wish present you had done? What will they regret that you postponed? What will they celebrate that you began? The time to start is not someday. The time to start is now, because now is the youngest your time will ever be. Let me introduce one final concept: legacy time. These are hours that outlive you. Most hours disappear when they end. You use them. They are gone. Nothing remains. But some hours echo forward through time. They create impact that outlasts your life. When you teach someone something valuable, you invest legacy time. Your hour becomes hundreds of future hours as that person applies what they learned. When you create something that helps others, you invest legacy time. A book, a system, a piece of art, a business that outlives its founder. When you raise a child with intention, every hour is legacy time. Your investment pays dividends through generations you will never meet. When you improve a community or institution, you invest legacy time. The hours you give create change that persists. Legacy time is the ultimate investment. It is time that keeps compounding long after you have stopped depositing. How much of your time is legacy time? How many of your hours will outlive you? If that number is small, is that aligned with your values? If you had more hours that created lasting impact, would you feel differently about how you spend your days? We have covered a lot of ground together. Let us bring it all together into what a time-wealthy life actually looks like. A time-wealthy life is not a life without obligations. It is a life where obligations are chosen consciously. A time-wealthy life is not a life without busyness. It is a life where busyness alternates with restoration. A time-wealthy life is not a life of maximum productivity. It is a life where productivity serves meaning rather than replacing it. A time-wealthy life is not a life without sacrifice. It is a life where you choose what to sacrifice instead of sacrificing what you value. Time-wealthy people look like everyone else from the outside. They have jobs and families and commitments and challenges. But inside their experience, something is different. They feel like they have enough time for what matters. They feel in control of their hours. They feel that their life is a reflection of their priorities. The shift is not external. The shift is in seeing. Once you see time as currency, once you calculate your hourly value, once you track your spending and build your budget and protect your margins and invest more than you spend, everything changes. Let me describe what a typical day looks like for someone who has made this shift. They wake without an alarm because they went to bed early enough to get adequate sleep. They have stopped treating sleep as negotiable. Their first action is not reaching for their phone. They have removed the device from their bedroom entirely, breaking the reflexive scroll that used to consume their first waking hour. They move through their morning routine on autopilot, not because mornings are boring, but because they have systematized the trivial decisions: what to wear, what to eat, when to exercise. These questions were answered long ago. Their limited decision-making capacity is saved for decisions that matter. Their golden hours are fiercely protected. Between 7 and 11 in the morning, when their cognitive capacity is highest, they do their most important work. No meetings, no email, no interruptions. The world can wait for 4 hours. Their best thinking cannot. They have a meeting budget. No more than 10 hours per week in meetings. Any meeting that does not pass the 3 tests. Is it necessary? Do they need to be there personally? Could it be shorter? Is declined or delegated? Their colleagues have learned that their time is not freely available, and interestingly, this has increased respect rather than diminished it. Their phone is a tool, not a master. Notifications are disabled for everything except truly urgent contacts. Social media apps are absent from the device. The screen is grayscale. They check it intentionally at scheduled times rather than reflexively whenever their hand is idle. They have margin built into every day. White space, unscheduled time. They are never rushing from one thing to the next because there is always buffer between commitments. When something unexpected arises, they have capacity to handle it without crisis. They invest time deliberately. Several hours each week go to skill development, relationship deepening, system building, or health optimization. They know these investments compound. They can feel themselves becoming more capable. Over time, rather than stagnating, they spend time consciously. Entertainment is chosen, not defaulted into. Rest is scheduled and protected. Leisure activities are anticipated and enjoyed rather than guilty and distracted. They say no more than they say yes, not because they are selfish, but because they understand that every yes has a cost. The requests that receive their time are the ones that align with their priorities. Everything else is declined with warmth but without apology. They conduct a weekly review. Every Sunday they look at how the past week's hours were allocated and plan how the coming week's hours will be invested. They notice patterns. They make adjustments. They compound learning across time. They have a clear sense of their time ROI. They know which activities produce the highest returns and prioritize accordingly. They know which relationships are assets and invest more there. They know which routines are working and protect them. They feel most days that they have enough time. Not because they have more hours than anyone else, because they spend their hours with intention. The same 168 weekly hours that feel scarce to time. Poor people feel abundant to them. This is not a fantasy. This is achievable. Not overnight, but progressively. Each practice builds on the last. Each improvement compounds. The journey from time poverty to time wealth is a series of small shifts that add up to transformation. You begin to notice the time costs of decisions. You feel that protective instinct when someone tries to withdraw from your account. You recognize investment opportunities that others miss. You guard your golden hours like the premium currency they are. And slowly, your life transforms. Not through massive changes, but through thousands of small ones. Saying no here, protecting time there, investing an hour in this, eliminating a subscription to that. The compound effect is remarkable. Small shifts in daily time allocation lead to massive shifts in yearly outcomes. 5 hours a week redirected from waste to investment is 260 hours a year. That is 6.5 work weeks. That is enough to learn a new skill, write a book, transform a relationship, build a business, change your health. Time wealth creates its own momentum. As you invest more, you become more capable. As you become more capable, your hours become more valuable. As they become more valuable, you protect them more fiercely. The cycle accelerates. Here is what I want you to do. Write a letter from yourself 1 year from now. The you who has lived with time economics for 12 months. The you who has tracked spending and built a budget and protected margins and shifted from spending to investing. What has changed for that future you? What have you stopped doing? What have you started? How does it feel to be time wealthy after a year of intentional living? Be specific. Include numbers where you can. How many hours a week do you invest now? What skills have you built? What relationships have deepened? What has your margin given you? Write this letter as if it is true, as if you have already lived it, as if you are looking back from that accomplished place. Then seal it, metaphorically. Put it away. Mark your calendar for 12 months from today. Open it then and see how reality compares to your vision. We started this audiobook with a sobering truth. You woke up this morning with 86,400 seconds. By tonight, every single one will be gone. That was true then. It is true now. It will be true tomorrow, and every tomorrow until your tomorrows run out. You came into this audiobook spending time unconsciously, letting hours slip through your fingers like coins through torn pockets. You are leaving as someone who sees every hour for what it is, a finite, non-renewable resource more precious than any currency ever minted. You now have your hourly rate burned into your brain. Every invitation, every notification, every quick favor will pass through that filter. Would I pay this much for this? You have a budget. You have margins. You have the word no loaded and ready. But more than tactics, something deeper has changed. You have moved from time-poverty thinking, where there is never enough, where you are always behind, where rest feels like theft, to time-wealth thinking. You know you have enough hours for everything that truly matters. You have simply stopped pretending everything matters equally. Your time choices will now ripple outward. When you protect your hours, you model that protection for others. When you invest time in people, they receive your presence, not your distraction. When you stop rushing, you give others permission to breathe. Tomorrow morning, $86.04 will be deposited in your account, and the morning after that. And for some finite number of mornings you do not get to know in advance. The question is no longer whether your time is valuable. You know it is. The question is whether you will spend it like it is. There is a practice I want to leave you with. It is called the evening reckoning. Every night, before you sleep, take 60 seconds to ask yourself 3 questions. First question: did I protect my golden hours today? Did my best energy go to my best work, or was it consumed by trivia? Second question: did I say no when I should have? Or did I give away time I needed for something that did not deserve it? Third question: was any hour today worth what I paid for it? Was there at least one moment when my time investment matched my values? These questions are not meant to induce guilt. They are meant to induce awareness. Each evening, you get a small data point. Over weeks, patterns emerge. Over months, you have a clear picture of where your time actually goes. The evening reckoning takes 60 seconds. 1 minute of reflection that compounds into a lifetime of awareness. That is a time investment with extraordinary return. The currency of time is now in your hands. Spend it like the fortune it is. Let me leave you with something to carry forward. Time is not money. It is more than money. Money can be earned, saved, and inherited. Time can only be spent. Money can be replaced when lost. Time lost is gone forever. Money can be given and received. Time can only flow in one direction. When someone says time is money, they have it backwards. Money is frozen time. It is past hours converted into a storable form. But the frozen form is always worth less than the living form. An hour of your life is worth more than whatever that hour could earn. You are wealthy beyond measure if you measure in the only currency that matters. You have hours. You have days. You have the opportunity to allocate them with intention. Most people live as if they are poor in time. They rush through days. They complain about not having enough. They feel perpetually behind. And yet they squander hours without thought. They give away their fortune to anyone who asks. You do not have to live that way anymore. You have the tools. You have the awareness. You have the knowledge of exactly how precious each hour is. What will you do with this one? Right now, as you finish listening to these words, you have a choice. You can close this audiobook and return to your previous relationship with time. Let the insights fade. Let the old patterns reassert. Let the urgency you felt dissolve into the comfortable unconsciousness of time-poverty thinking. Or you can act, calculate your hourly rate, track your spending for a week, build your budget, protect your margins, start saying no, shift from spending to investing, guard your golden hours, cancel your unauthorized subscriptions, write your letter from the future. The tools are simple. The implementation is the challenge. But you have something you did not have before. You have seen the invisible currency. You cannot unsee it. That awareness alone will change you. Every time you are about to surrender an hour, something in you will whisper the question, is this worth my time? Is this aligned with my budget? Is this an investment or an expense? Am I spending consciously or bleeding out? Those whispers will become louder. Those questions will become instinctive. And one day you will realize that you have become time wealthy without even noticing when the shift occurred. It starts now, not tomorrow, not Monday, not next month, now. The 86,400 seconds in your account today are ticking down as you listen. Some of them have already disappeared while you absorbed these ideas. The question is, what you will do with the ones that remain. I have given you everything I can. A framework for seeing time as currency, a method for calculating its value, a system for tracking and budgeting, tools for protecting and investing, permission to say no, vision for legacy, hours. Warning about the someday trap. Now it is your turn. You have something in your hands more valuable than all the money in all the banks in all the world. You have hours, living hours, hours that can be shaped into anything you choose. Shape them well. Your time-wealthy life is waiting. It starts with the next hour, and the one after that, and every one that follows until your hours run out. May you spend them like the fortune they are. This is the end of currency of time, but it is the beginning of something else. Your relationship with time, rebuilt from the ground up. Your awareness of the invisible currency, awakened permanently. Your life, allocated with intention for the first time. Go live it well. The clock is already running. The only question is what you will do with what remains. Begin now. Begin now. Begin now. There is one more thing before we part. A story I have been holding until the end. An elderly man sat on a park bench watching children play. A young woman sat down beside him, checking her phone, muttering about being late, calculating whether she had time to stop for coffee before her meeting. The old man watched her for a while. Then he spoke. "Can I tell you something my father told me?" The woman looked up, surprised. "Sure," she said, though her tone said she did not have time for an old man's story. "When my father was dying," the old man said, "I sat beside his bed. He had been a busy man his whole life, successful, admired. He had built companies and served on boards and traveled the world. I asked him what advice he would give me. I expected some wisdom about business or investing or success. He looked at me with eyes that had seen 92 years. And he said, I spent my life thinking time was renewable, that there would always be more tomorrow, that I could defer what mattered because there would be time for it later. I was wrong. Time is the only thing that never comes back. I would trade everything I built for one more afternoon with my children when they were young." The old man paused. I asked him what he would do differently if he could do it again. He said, "I would hold moments instead of rushing past them. I would be present when I was present instead of always somewhere else in my mind. I would say no to things that did not matter, so I could say yes to things that did. I would remember every single day that this day was made of hours that would never come again." The woman had stopped checking her phone. "My father died that night," the old man said, "and I have lived every day since trying to honor what he taught me on his last day on earth." He looked at the children playing. Those children have their whole lives ahead of them. They have millions of hours waiting to be lived. But those hours will pass, just as mine did, just as my father's did. And one day they will be old, looking back, hoping they spent their fortune well. He turned to the woman. "You are not late," he said. "You are exactly where you are supposed to be at exactly the right moment. The question is whether you will be here fully or whether you will spend this moment worrying about the next one." The woman felt something shift in her chest. The urgency that had gripped her loosened. "Thank you," she said, and she meant it. The old man smiled. "Go catch your meeting. But remember, the hours will pass whether you notice them or not. Noticing is the only way to actually live them." The woman walked away, but she did not hurry. For the first time in months, she felt something she could not name. Later, she would realize it was presence, the feeling of being fully inside. An hour instead of racing through it toward the next one. She never forgot that conversation, and she spent the rest of her life, all the hours that remained, trying to live what the old man's dying father had taught. Time is the only thing that never comes back. Spend it like you know that. This is the end, but it is also the beginning. Go well. Use your hours. Be present in them. And remember, always remember, that this hour, right now, is a gift. The deposit has been made. The seconds are ticking. What will you do with them? Only you can answer. Only you can choose. Choose well. Choose now. Your time starts here. But before you go, let me give you something more. Practical tools you can implement starting today. Because awareness without action is just interesting philosophy. And you did not invest these hours for philosophy. You invested them for change. Let us talk about the morning audit. Every morning, before you check email, before you look at your phone, before you engage with anyone else's agenda, take 90 seconds to answer 3 questions. First question: what is the single most important thing I could accomplish today? Not the most urgent, not the loudest, the most important. The thing that, if it were the only thing you accomplished, would make today a success. Second question: what is trying to steal my time today? Look at your calendar. Look at your commitments. What is scheduled that does not deserve to be there? What demands are coming that you should decline? Anticipate the theft before it happens. Third question: how will I protect my golden hours? When are you sharpest today? What must happen during those hours? What must not happen? Make the decision before the day makes it for you. 90 seconds. 3 questions. Do this every morning and you will start more days with intention than you have started in years. Now let us talk about the weekly review. Once a week, take 30 minutes to examine how you spent your time. Not to judge yourself, to learn, to adjust, to improve. Pull out your calendar and your tracking data if you are keeping it. Ask yourself, what percentage of my time went to investment this week? How does that compare to last week? Am I trending in the right direction? Look at your waste category. What stole the most hours? Was it the same thief as last week? If so, what will you do differently next week to stop the bleeding? Check your margin. Did you have breathing room? Or were you packed so tight that any disruption became a crisis? How will you build more margin next week? Review your nose. Did you decline things you should have declined? Did you say yes to things you regret? What pattern do you see? How will you strengthen your boundaries next week? Finally, look at your energy alignment. Did your most important work happen during your highest energy hours? Or did low-value activities colonize your peak time again? What schedule changes will protect your golden hours next week? 30 minutes. Once a week. This review compounds over time. Each week you learn something. Each week you adjust something. After a year, you have made 52 adjustments. Your time allocation will be unrecognizably better. Let me tell you about a man named Derek who implemented these practices. Derek was 44 years old and felt like his life was running him instead of the other way around. He had a good job, a family he loved, hobbies he had abandoned, and a persistent sense that his best years were evaporating while he watched helplessly. Derek started with the morning audit. Every day, 3 questions, 90 seconds. For the first week, his answers were vague. Most important thing, get through the day. Time thieves, everything. Protect golden hours, I do not even know when they are. But by week 3, his answers sharpened. Most important thing, finish the proposal that could earn the promotion. Time thieves, the 3 recurring meetings that accomplish nothing. Golden hours, 7 to 9 in the morning before the office chaos begins. Derek started doing his most important work between 7 and 9. He pushed back on one of the 3 useless meetings. He declined a new committee invitation that would have added 5 hours to his monthly load. After 3 months, Derek reported something remarkable. He was working the same number of hours, but accomplishing twice as much. More importantly, he had reclaimed his Saturday mornings for hiking, something he had abandoned years ago. He was spending 2 hours every Sunday with his daughter, teaching her to cook, something he had always intended to do someday. Someday had become today. Not because Derek found more time, because he started spending the time he had like it mattered. What would your morning audit reveal? What would your weekly review teach you? Let me give you another practical tool. The time cost label. Just as nutrition labels show the caloric content of food, train yourself to see the time cost of every decision. When an invitation arrives, do not just consider whether it sounds interesting. Calculate the full time cost, the event itself, the preparation, the travel, the recovery, the opportunity cost of what you will not do during those hours. See the total number, then decide. When a new commitment beckons, calculate its annual time cost. A weekly meeting is not just 1 hour, it is 52 hours per year. A monthly obligation is not just 2 hours, it is 24 hours per year. See the annual number before you say yes. When a distraction tempts you, calculate its weekly time cost. 5 minutes checking social media feels trivial, but if it happens 20 times a day, that is nearly 12 hours per week. 12 hours. See that number before you reach for your phone. The time cost label makes the invisible visible. It transforms vague decisions into clear economic calculations. It lets you compare apples to apples. Is this meeting worth 52 hours of my life this year? Is this scroll habit worth 12 hours every week? Now let me address something that comes up for almost everyone who begins this journey: the guilt. The sense that by protecting your time, you are being selfish. That by saying no, you are letting people down. That by prioritizing yourself, you are somehow failing others. This is a lie your time poverty thinking tells to keep you poor. Consider this. When you give away all your time, what do you have left to give? When you say yes to everything, how present are you for anything? When you protect nothing, how valuable is what you offer? The most generous people I know are fierce protectors of their time. They guard their hours precisely so they can give them fully. They say no to almost everything so they can say yes completely. They protect their margins so they can be present when they show up. A woman named Catherine struggled with this. She had been raised to believe that saying no was selfish, that her needs should always come last, that being a good person meant giving until there was nothing left. By age 50, Catherine was exhausted, resentful, and emotionally bankrupt. She had given so much time to others that she had nothing left for herself, or, ironically, for the people who mattered most. Her generosity had become a performance, not a gift. She showed up for everything while being truly present for nothing. Catherine's transformation began with a question her therapist asked. Who benefits when you are depleted? The answer was no one. When Catherine was exhausted, her work suffered, her relationships suffered, her health suffered. Her children got a mother who was physically present but mentally absent. Her friends got someone who showed up but could not truly listen. Her colleagues got someone who attended meetings but had nothing to contribute. Catherine's endless giving was not generous. It was the opposite of generous. It was giving everyone the dregs instead of giving anyone the best. Catherine started protecting her time. She said no to things that did not align with her priorities. She built margins into her days. She scheduled time for her own recovery and growth. The people around her noticed something strange. Catherine became more present, more engaged, more genuinely helpful. By protecting her time, she had made her time more valuable. By giving less of it, she was giving more. This is the paradox. Time-wealthy people are more generous than time-poor people. Not less, because they have something worth giving. What would you have to give if you protected your time? What kind of presence would you offer if you showed up rested and intentional instead of depleted and distracted? Let me share another visualization with you. Close your eyes again or let your gaze soften. Imagine you are holding a jar. This jar represents your daily time capacity. It is the same size every day. It cannot stretch. It cannot expand. It is simply the space you have. Now imagine you have rocks, pebbles, and sand to put in the jar. The rocks are your most important priorities. The things that align with your deepest values. The things only you can do. The things that will matter in 10 years. The pebbles are important but smaller commitments. Things that matter, but not as much as the rocks. Things that could be done by others or postponed if necessary. The sand is everything else. The busy work, the distractions, the things that seem urgent but are not important. The things that fill space without creating value. Here is what most people do. They put the sand in first. They fill their jar with busy work and distractions. Then they add the pebbles, cramming in obligations until the jar is almost full. Then they try to add the rocks. But there is no room. The sand and pebbles have consumed all the space. They wonder why their most important priorities never happen. They blame lack of time. But the time was there. They just filled it with sand first. Now imagine putting the rocks in first. You drop them into the empty jar. They take up significant space. Good. They should. They are what matters most. Then you add the pebbles. They settle into the gaps between the rocks. There is room for them around the priorities. Then you add the sand. It filters down into the remaining space, filling the cracks and crevices. Look at your jar now. The rocks are visible. The priorities made it in. And the sand found its place, but only after the important things were secured. This is what paying yourself first means for time. Put the rocks in your jar before the sand has a chance to fill it. Schedule your priorities before obligations can colonize your calendar. Protect your important things first, and let the less important things fit around them. When you open your eyes, ask yourself, what are my rocks? What are the 3 to 5 things that matter most in my life? Have I put them in my jar first, or have I let sand fill the space they need? Let me now address something that most productivity systems ignore: the role of rest. We have talked about investment time and spending time, but there is another category that does not fit neatly into either: restoration time. Time that is not productive in any traditional sense, but that makes all other time more valuable. Sleep is restoration time, 7 to 9 hours of it, non-negotiable. The research is overwhelming. When you cut sleep, everything suffers. Cognitive function, emotional regulation, physical health, decision-making, creativity. You do not gain hours by sleeping less. You lose effectiveness in all the hours you are awake. Exercise is restoration time. It feels like you are spending hours that could go to work, but those hours come back multiplied. More energy, better focus, improved mood, longer health span. The most successful people I know protect exercise time with the same fierceness they protect meetings with important clients. Sabbath is restoration time. Whether you observe it religiously or secularly, the principle is timeless. 1 day in 7, step back from production. Rest, reflect, connect, play. Let your mind and body recover from the week's expenditure. Margin time is restoration time. The unscheduled hours we discussed earlier, they look unproductive on a calendar, but they provide the space for restoration that makes all other hours more effective. Here is what time-poor people get wrong about restoration. They think it is a luxury, something you do after all the work is done, a reward for productivity. But the work is never done. The inbox will never be empty. The to-do list will never be complete. If you wait until everything is finished to rest, you will never rest. Restoration is not a reward for productivity. Restoration is the source of productivity. You cannot sustainably produce without regularly restoring. The two are not in competition. They are partners. Each makes the other possible. A man named Victor learned this the hard way. Victor was a surgeon. His work literally saved lives. He considered any hour not spent working or preparing for work to be wasted time. Sleep was for the weak. Exercise was for people with less important jobs. Rest was laziness in disguise. At 52, Victor had a heart attack in the hospital parking lot. He survived, barely, but his career was over. The surgeon, who had been too busy saving lives to take care of himself, had sacrificed his future on the altar of productivity. During his recovery, Victor had time to think about time in ways he never had before. He realized that his relentless work ethic had not maximized his contribution. It had ended his contribution prematurely. If he had rested adequately, exercised regularly, slept sufficiently, he might have had 20 more years of saving lives ahead of him. Instead, he had borrowed from his future until his future collapsed. Victor now speaks to medical students about what he wishes he had understood earlier. You cannot pour from an empty cup, he tells them. You cannot give your best to others if you do not give restoration to yourself. Taking care of yourself is not selfish. It is the precondition for taking care of anyone else. How are you treating your restoration needs? Are you investing in sleep, exercise, Sabbath, and margin? Or are you borrowing from your future self and hoping the bill never comes due? Let me give you one more framework before we close. The concept of time boundaries. Just as you have financial boundaries, lines you will not cross with money, you need time boundaries. Lines you will not cross with hours. Some boundaries protect your time from others. For example, I do not take meetings before 9 in the morning. That time is for my most important work. Or I do not check email after 7 at night. That time is for my family. Or I do not accept same-day invitations except for genuine emergencies. My time is planned in advance. Some boundaries protect your time from yourself. For example, I do not scroll social media during golden hours. That is peak time for peak work. Or I do not start new projects on Fridays. That leads to weekend work that steals restoration time. Or I do not commit to anything on the spot. I always sleep on significant time commitments. Some boundaries protect your future time from present impulses. For example, I do not take on more than 3 major projects at once. Additional opportunities must wait regardless of how exciting they seem. Or I do not sacrifice sleep for work more than twice a month. Chronic sleep deprivation is time bankruptcy waiting to happen. The specific boundaries matter less than having boundaries at all. The act of drawing lines creates clarity. When you know what you will not do, deciding what you will do becomes much simpler. A woman named Patricia was asked to serve on a prestigious board. It was an honor. It would look impressive on her resume. The other board members were people she admired. The cause was one she believed in. But Patricia had a boundary. No more than 8 hours of volunteer work per month. She had learned through painful experience that unlimited volunteer commitments would consume unlimited time. The boundary kept her generous without letting generosity become self-destruction. She calculated the board commitment. Monthly meetings of 2 hours, preparation of 2 hours, committee work of 3 hours, travel time of 2 hours, plus the inevitable additional requests that would come. She was looking at 10 to 15 hours per month minimum. Patricia declined. She explained her boundary. She offered to help in other ways that fit within her 8-hour limit. The board found another member. The world continued turning, and Patricia protected her time for the things she had already committed to. Some people would call this selfish. Patricia called it sustainable. She could maintain her 8-hour volunteer commitment indefinitely. The person who said yes to everything would eventually burn out and give nothing. What boundaries do you need? What lines will you draw? What will you refuse to do? Not because it is bad, but because protecting your time requires saying no to good things. Let me tell you one final story. It is about an ordinary Tuesday that became extraordinary because of how one person chose to spend it. Elena was a mid-level manager at a company you have never heard of, living a life that would never make headlines. She woke at 6, spent 90 seconds on her morning audit, and identified the single most important thing: having a real conversation with her teenage son, who had been distant lately. She protected her golden hours from 7 to 9 for deep work, finishing a project that had been hanging over her for weeks. She declined a lunch invitation that would have consumed 2 hours for small talk with someone she barely knew. At 3 o'clock, she left work on time, instead of staying late to prove her commitment. She picked up her son from school, something she had not done in months. On the drive home, she did not check her phone at the red lights. She was present. That evening, her son really talked, about things he had been holding, about worries he had not shared, about a girl he liked and a friend who had betrayed him, and a fear about the future that had been keeping him up at night. Elena listened, fully, because she was not exhausted, because she had margin, because she had protected her time all day for exactly this moment, even though she did not know this moment was coming. Her son did not remember that Tuesday as anything special. But Elena knew. She knew that if she had said yes to that lunch, she would have been too depleted to be present. If she had stayed late at work, she would have missed the pickup. If she had been checking her phone, she would have missed the signals that her son was ready to open up. That ordinary Tuesday was a masterpiece of time allocation, not because anything dramatic happened, because the undramatic things that mattered actually received the time they deserved. This is what time-wealthy living looks like. Not perpetual productivity, not endless accomplishment, not optimizing every minute for maximum output. It looks like having the energy for what matters because you did not waste it on what does not. It looks like being present for the people you love because you protected the space for presence. It looks like doing your best work because you scheduled it during your best hours. It looks like an ordinary Tuesday that becomes extraordinary because of how you chose to spend it. You will have many more Tuesdays, thousands of them, if you are fortunate. How many will be spent unconsciously, hours leaking away without intention? How many will be spent with awareness, each hour allocated by choice? The difference between those two kinds of Tuesdays is the difference between a life you fell into and a life you built. You have everything you need to build. You have the framework, time as currency, hours as deposits, spending versus investing, debts versus assets, golden hours and margin and boundaries and restoration. You have the tools, the morning audit, the weekly review, the time cost label, the jar with rocks and pebbles and sand. The word no, loaded and ready. You have the awareness. You have seen the invisible currency. You have felt the urgency of finite hours. You have recognized the cost of unconscious spending. Now you just need to begin. Not tomorrow, not Monday, not after you finish what you are currently doing. Now. Actually, your time started the moment you were born and has been running ever since. But your awareness of it, your intentional stewardship of it, your time-wealthy life, that starts here, right now, with whatever hours you have left today, with whatever days you have left this year, with whatever years you have left in this life. Use them, not perfectly. Perfection is not the goal. Use them intentionally. Awareness is the goal. Know where they go. Choose where they go. Protect the ones that matter. Invest more than you spend. Build margin. Say no. Calculate the cost. Honor your golden hours. Cancel the subscriptions you never chose. Write the letter from your future self and live, truly live, inside your hours. Because they are precious. Because they are finite. Because they are yours. The currency of time is in your hands. You are richer than you know. Spend it like the fortune it is. Goodbye for now. And thank you for spending these hours with me. They were worth it. I hope the hours that follow will be worth it too. I believe they will be. Because you now see what you did not see before. And seeing changes everything. Go see your life with new eyes. Go spend your time with new awareness. Go live like every hour counts. Because every hour does count. Every single one, including this one, including the next one, including all the ones that follow. May they be everything you hope. May they be everything you choose. May they be spent on what matters. May they add up to a life you are proud of. That is my wish for you. That is the purpose of everything we have discussed. A life spent well, a fortune spent wisely, a currency honored and protected and invested. Your time, your hours, your life. Go live it now. The clock is running. It has always been running. But now you know. And knowing is the beginning of everything. Goodbye. And good luck. You will not need luck. You will need intention. You have that now. Use it, starting now. Starting with the very next moment. Starting with the breath you are about to take. Starting with the thought you are about to think. Starting with the choice you are about to make. This is it. This is the moment. This is where your time, wealthy life begins. Not tomorrow, not later. Now. Go. Your hours are waiting. Fill them with what matters. That is all there is. That is everything. Your time, your choice, your life. Begin.